Captain, we have them. We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome back to Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Joining me as always is my co-host Sabriel. Hello, Sabriel.
Hello, Ken.
We've been a little bit remiss in airing the show ever since the end of the Season 1 finale. We've been a little depressed about the lack of new Discovery content, but to fill that gap, there's lots of other Discovery content out there. And this week we're taking a look at Star Trek Online, the MMO based on Star Trek. And joining us to have that discussion is the lead designer at Cryptic Studios, Captain Gecko himself, Al Rivera. Hello, Al.
Hello, Ken. Hello, Sabriel. Thanks for having me on your wonderful new show.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Excellent. My pleasure.
So what is the responsibility of the lead designer for a game?
The lead designer is in charge of all the designers, and generally I'm in charge of the fun, right? What is the story? What is the gameplay? What is the experience for the player? We have a lead artist who's in charge of the looks. What does it look like, and what the pretty effects and the animations and the environments look like. I'm largely in charge of the story and what kind of ships we're going to make, and the pew pew and the explosions, and what characters we're going to bring in, what actors from the TV series we're going to bring in, what story arcs we're going to pick up, and I work with the lead artist and the lead engineer and the lead producer to make that happen.
Wow, and Star Trek Online has been running for, as you said before the show, many years. You've been at Cryptic for even longer than that. You've been a Trekkie your entire life. What Star Trek games did you play before you created Star Trek Online?
You already did your homework, huh? I already did some homework, yeah.
We came prepared.
I've been here at Cryptic for, it'll be 15 years in April.
Wow.
And I've been on Star Trek Online from day one. So I've been on Star Trek Online for about 9.5 years.
Goodness.
It's been live for 8 years. Yeah, and I've been a Trekkie pretty much all my life. I started when, as far as I can remember, watching TOS. My sister was a big, and still is a big, science fiction nerd, and she got me into Star Trek when, I don't know, 5, 6 or something like that, and watched every piece of Star Trek that came out. TOS was already out by the time I was watching it, but I watched every TOS episode and then every Star Trek episode that came out after that, after TNG, and every movie. So, huge Star Trek fan. It's a huge science fiction fan. I'm not just exclusive to Star Trek, right? So anything science fiction. I'll watch bad science fiction before watching good drama any day. So, what Star Trek games did I play? I played the favorite that before Star Trek Online was Voyager Elite Force. That was probably the only one that really, really grabbed me that much. I had a couple of the technical manuals. I still have it. I don't think it runs on Windows anymore. The Enterprise, virtual simulator. You could walk around the entire Enterprise technical manual or something. I played one that had John Delancey in it, that against Borg. I can't even remember what that one was called. I played the one on Xbox. I don't even remember the names. I feel embarrassed. Where you get the Star Trek. You get to play each one of the ships. You start off in the Enterprise era, and you go all the way up through all the Enterprises. I forgot what that one was called. We played that one. Actually, I played that one a little bit before we started designing Star Trek Online, because we wanted to see how they handled shield facings and torpedoes and voiceover work and that sort of thing. And I apologize for not remembering that name.
I know.
Elite Force was the most memorable of all of the Star Trek titles that I can recall. I've played lots of them. A lot of them just didn't really leave that much of an impression. I think Star Trek was always a challenging IP to make a game for, because it's not Star Wars, right? It's about drama and the human experience and interactions between characters, and you lose if you have to shoot something. That's the whole idea of Star Trek. So that's hard to turn into a video game. So I think a lot of video games suffered with that, especially when most of the games were dealing with playing as Picard or playing as Kirk or playing as one of the main characters who wouldn't do something. So they not all the Star Trek games previously were were all that strong. Recently, now we've had a lot of good Star Trek games with Star Trek Online, obviously, and now, even Timelines and Bridge Crew, right? Because I think things have changed. It's a good time to be a gamer and a Star Trek fan right now.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you entirely. Well, since this is a Discovery show, let's tie it in with Discovery, Star Trek Online. Discovery gives the opportunity for Star Trek Online to have like actual new TV material, something that hasn't been out there since, oh gosh, I don't know, 18 years or so.
Yeah, long time.
What's it like working with all this new material?
Hard. It is much harder. It's much more exciting and much. But what's hard is that we at Star Trek Online, one of the things that we try to do is we try to leverage all the 51 years of Star Trek lore and tell stories about stuff that familiar places, familiar events, things that are in that are in the show that we've all seen that we really didn't really get to explore fully, or we don't really know where it came from. Like, what do we know about the Iconians? What about those bluegill neural parasites from Contagion and TNG? What were those guys about? What about those creatures from Schisms that tortured Worf and took his arm off in Solanagen space? What were all these things that happened? What were those shroomy people from Enterprise that were experimenting with Archer's crew? There are all these little loose threads throughout all of Star Trek, and in Star Trek Online, that's where our story thrives. Is we try to take all of those loose threads, all those characters, all those side stories, prequels and sequels, and tell the story in Star Trek Online. And it's been really strong, and players really love that because they get to really continue to flesh out things that they never, got to experience before. It's much harder with Discovery because I'm learning it sometimes just as fast as everyone else is learning it. We're developing a nice relationship with CBS and the Discovery team. But we're laying down the tracks while the train's coming when it comes to Discovery, right? And also their stories are way tighter, right? They basically told a 15-hour movie, right? Is what they did, right? So, and it's nice and tight. There's not a lot of dangling threads in the Discovery stories. There's definitely some there. There's lots of material, and you can see that in some of the novels that are starting to come out. David Mack and help me out here. Who's the other writer that just picked up the last Discovery novel? Oh.
Dayton Ward.
Dayton Ward, thank you. Dayton Ward just wrote the second one, right? So they're picking up stories and they're working really closely with Discovery team. Discovery works with third parties. They're way more integrated with games and books and comics to keep things keep things in continuity. So, but it's still so new. There's not 50 years of stuff to draw from and start, what if this thing over here was related to this thing over here? I got 13 episodes or 15 episodes to work with. So far more challenging. And it's live, it's hot. And so there's a lot more attention to it. It's not like working with TNG where, okay, I can build a case for why I want to build a story this way because of this that happened 20 years ago. And CBS is like, yeah, that sounds fine. Now it's like, no, we can't do that because we're going to do this still coming up in next season or in this episode we're planning to do this thing. So you can't do that. And so, okay. Yeah. So it's far more challenging. And I don't know what's going to happen next year. I have some clues. I have some discussions. We have we get sneak peeks on things, and we get some artwork and that sort of stuff. So, but I'm just kind of putting a picture together with only like 10% of the puzzle pieces. So it's definitely challenging, but it's really exciting. It's really exciting because I love the style and I love the storytelling. I love the art style, the ships and the weapons and the gear and the costumes and the way they redesign the characters. And so it's really rich for gaming, but it'll be very challenging.
Well, all the TV shows since Voyager have taken a step backward into the past, whereas it's up to the novels and the games like Star Trek Online to look to the future. How do you introduce content from the history, the past of Star Trek, because Discovery is now like 120 years ago in Star Trek Online's timeline? How do you introduce old content into the future?
That is a really good question. And it's a really big challenge. Now, it is not insurmountable because it's science fiction and timey-wimey and time travel and that sort of thing, right? And holodecks and alternate realities and all that sort of thing. In Star Trek Online, the main game takes place in 2409, and you can start off as a Federation Romulan or Klingon. But you can also start as a TOS Federation player in Star Trek Online. So you can start in the year 2365. You can start out in, and we have an arc, and you play in TOS, and you start off. You play with that style of art, that 60s art, those Constitution-class ships and ships that look like the original 60s Constitution-class ship. You have the full uniforms, all the weapons, all the gears, and you play out stories there that we leverage from the original series. And then at the end of that arc, we introduce spoilers. I'll give you guys little spoilers. But you guys everyone had a year and a half to play now. So Daniels from Enterprise era, you do something that he warns you not to, and as a result, bad things happen. So he takes you out of time and brings you to the future to help with the temporal Cold War that's in the future. So we do some time travel, some timey-wimey stuff, and you get to play in the TOS era, and then we bring you back forward into our current timeline with the ability to kind of go back and forth. Oh, there's another event because temporal Cold War, and you go back in time and you do some more TOS stuff. And so we have other episodes. You even get to do the Battle of Procyon 5, which is the big battle that happens in the future that we see in Enterprise.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Wow.
Yeah, so you actually get to participate in the Battle of Procyon 5 in Star Trek Online. So we can see those events, and you're a part of it. And the things that the story that brought you there, we get to see how that happened in Star Trek Online. We even go back in time and go to the Kelvin timeline. We even go to an alternate universe, and we have stories that happen in the Kelvin timeline. And so see those ships and see those characters. We have GAT 0178 or 0718, the android that was in it's in the JJ movies. He does. Yeah, so he's in our game. We've got that actor, and so he's on one of the ships there, and you get to do an adventure with him. So we have lots of ways to get you. I mean, there's Guardian Forever. There's time travel stuff. There's time travel mechanics. You can slingshot around the sun. So we take you to different eras. You can play whatever era. We have the Enterprise era. We have TOS era. We have Kelvin timeline. We have TNG era. So we have every era of Star Trek is in Star Trek Online, even though the main story happens in 2409. So we will just have to invent a way, one of the old ways or a new way, to get you to experience Discovery content in Star Trek Online. But that's not going to stop us from just getting Discovery assets like we just released. You can get a Crossfire class ship in Star Trek Online complete with a artificial mycelium network spore drive. You can get the Discovery uniforms. You can get the Klingon sarcophagus ship. You can get the Shenzhou. So you can get a lot of, and we're just going to bring a lot more. So a lot of the assets, and you can role play as that as you like. But there's currently no Discovery stories in Star Trek Online at this point. But we were able to get some things in right away. It takes a while. Like there's a lag time, right? It's like it takes months to make content for Star Trek Online. So, and right now we're marching towards a Deep Space Nine Gamma Quadrant expansion that will come out this summer. So we've been working on that for a while. So it'll take some while before we get some more Discovery stuff. But yeah, weaving that in, that's Doctor Who crazy timey-wimey stuff. We'll figure a way to make it happen. It's not foreign to Star Trek, right?
Right. I think some of the TOS content I played in Star Trek Online was some of the most fun I've had, to be honest. So I really love that era. So it's cool.
Yeah, because it immerses you in this world and this and this kind of little pocket universe of Star Trek and you can continue to role play as that. You can keep wearing the TOS uniforms and use TOS weapons and TOS ships if you'd like, and you can play Star Trek Online as your favorite Star Trek, however you'd like. You can play it as a TOS character. You can play it as a JJ character. You can play it as as a TNG or more Voyager uniforms or Wrath of Khan era. So you can kind of stylize your captain however you like, and now you can start to do that with Discovery as well.
My Andorian captain, she has the Mirror Universe from Enterprise uniform.
So you have a TOS Andorian in a TOS mirror uniform. See, yeah. So you can do whatever you want in Star Trek Online, and we will will certainly have Discovery themed story arcs and content at some point in the future on Star Trek Online, so you can actually just kind of really, really dive into that universe as opposed to just dressing up as one, which is what you can do now. Can you hear me okay? I'm trying to make sure I got the mic's good distance. Okay, good.
You were doing great. You kind of tipped your toes on another question I had for you was, did creating the Crossfield, Walker, and Sarcophagus ships create any new challenges you haven't experienced before, since now you actually have these shows on TV right now?
Yeah, it did create a really good big challenge. That was really interesting. It's a funny kind of a cute story. CBS sent us a hard drive with a ton of Discovery assets. This was a while ago, maybe either right before or right after the first episode launched. I can't remember exactly when. And so they sent us. So we had like all the models, the ship models from the show, the original ones. And certain and other guns and things like that, and some photos of uniforms and general art assets for the artist. And at that point, it was new, and they were being tight-lipped about things, and no one knew about the Spore drive yet. And they said, I said, can you tell us is the ship going to do something different? Is it going to, I thought maybe those little rings might separate, like saucer separations, and fly out like Xena chakras or something, and you could, little pizza cutters would fly out.
Oh man!
And so I didn't know what it do, and I said, we have to finish this. We've only got a couple weeks and a couple, or maybe a month. I don't remember, but we were running out of time because we needed to get the ships out in January, the end of January. And they were tight-lipped as well. As soon as you see the models, you kind of have an idea about what it does. And then we could see when we had the ship that you could spin the pizza cutter on the Discovery. And so it would move, because we knew that we had to, if we were going to release the Crossfire class, that we couldn't have it not do what was special about the Crossfire class. For instance, if you have the Galaxy class Enterprise in our game, it has a saucer separation. If you have a Intrepid class, Voyager ship, it has a blade of armor from the
Endgame.
show. From Endgame, exactly. So we always have whatever's in the show, we want to represent, that the ships can do the thing that was in the show. Because if this thing does something interesting, because they kept telling us, it does something cool, but they wouldn't tell us what it was. And then it was, I think, like that Sunday after I had the conversation with CBS and we got the art, and they said, then they had the first jump, and then we saw what it did. I said, okay. Now we know what we got to do, and so we started scrambling to make the art, to have it animate, and to have the effects to do everything it was. And then a couple episodes later, they did the Lorca maneuver, right, where they jumped in and dropped the torpedoes and jumped out. Mm-hmm. So we made that, and then it did 133 jumps around the sarcophagus ship. So as we're seeing it on screen, we said, we got to do that too.
So those Monday morning meetings are quite interesting.
Yeah, so we're just rushing to get all the things in at the last minute for that ship, which is not something we would have experienced making, Galaxy class ship or whatever. So, or something from the movies. So yeah, so that's what I mean by laying down the tracks. Well, the train's coming in. Now that they got the first season out, they're a little more relaxed. Discovery did really well, and we showed them our work. And they're really happy. So now they're sharing more with us now ahead of time. So it's getting a little easier. But it's not. I don't have a 15 episodes script in front of me. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. So we just get little bits and pieces, and as they know, as they're completing, we get little pieces of information. But yeah, that was challenging to get that in, because we were, it's like, you've got to have it do this 133. Oh no, we don't have any time. So we got to do it. Figure out a way. We got to have it be able to do multiple jumps and hops around like that. So yeah, that's been the major challenge. It's just working with something that's a live product like this. It's error prone, right? Do
you also get to work with the actors if you need some original voice acting or modeling?
Well, we haven't worked with any Discovery actors yet, but we've gotten about 20 or 30 actors from Star Trek, from all the series, I don't think we have anyone from Enterprise, if I come to think of it.
Oh, you have Daniels.
That's right. We have Daniels. So we've gotten these Crosby as both Tasha Yar and Sela. We've had Chase Masterson. We've had Michael Dorn. We've got almost all of the cast of Voyager in the game, and we've gotten and we started to announce our cast members for our Victory is Life DS9 expansion. So we got a bunch of those guys, and I think we've announced. I don't want to blow it over here, but because they've only released some of them, but I know we released Alexander Siddig, Bashir, and we've announced Odo, and I can't remember who else we announced. So
Armin Shimmerman.
Okay, we did announce Armin. Yeah, I mean I know who there's in there, but I don't know who we announced, so I don't want to accidentally flub and mention someone who hasn't been announced yet. So we'll be getting quite a few of the Deep Space Nine cast, and then hopefully we'll be able to work with the Discovery cast as well. I don't see it as a problem. It's just a matter of what stories do we want to tell, and who to get to make sense to bring in, and who wants to work with us, and also who can we afford. I mean, honestly, there's a money aspect, and there's some actors that we just can't touch because they're worth too much than we can than is worth for us.
You mentioned the DS9 expansion, Victory is Life, which is coming out this summer. Is that exclusively DS9, or is it also, might you sneak in a few Discovery crossovers?
Well, the story arc will be a very specific Deep Space Nine Gamma Quadrant story, right? The story that we're telling is will involve that cast. We're gonna immerse you in that universe for a while. So if there's anything Discovery related, it might be tangential and hinting, but it's not going to be anything distracting. We're not crossing the streams on this one. If you played our Voyager, our Delta Rising, our Delta Quadrant expansion, it'll be like that. We're going to have stories that are personal to the individual characters from Deep Space Nine, and we will dive deeper into that universe. So this is not a Discovery expansion. This is a Deep Space Nine one.
I believe it has the Herc, if I recall correctly.
The anniversary episode revealed that the main antagonist is the Herc.
Yeah. For those who don't remember, the Herc had Klingons had a big thing with them, like thousands of years ago, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. I think it was 1,000 years ago. The Herc are the only race that ever defeated the Klingons, and we saw them never saw them, but we saw some history of them. They had the Sword of Kahless in Deep Space Nine, and that was the episode where Worf and I think it was it Kor, or
yeah, Kor,
I think it was Kor, and Jadzia go to find the Sword of Kahless in a cave that was a Herc outpost of some sort, or Herc caves, and they track that down. So we learn a little bit about the Herc in Star Trek. We know that Kahless fought the Herc, but there's not much in Star Trek lore that tells about them, other than they attacked the Klingon homeworld 1,000 years ago. They defeated the Klingons, and they got the Sword of Kahless somehow, and never saw them again. So there's a little bit of architecture around, and so that's the kind of thing we like to do in Star Trek Online. We like to pick up those. Whoa, what were the Herc? Let's find out. Let's explain the Herc, and so we're going to tell a Herc story. So their history, where they're about, where they're from, what happened, that sort of thing. So that's the kind of stories we like to tell.
So even though Star Trek Discovery is brand new as of just this past fall, the Star Trek franchise has been alive and well for the last decade or so, and longer, especially with the last 3 movies and then the 50th anniversary. Have you noticed any uptick in Star Trek Online registrations with certain events, like when a new movie comes out or when Discovery premiered? Do a lot of people start playing the games because interest is renewed?
Yes, and maybe. So where I'm saying maybe is that it's kind of hard to sometimes tease that out, because we purposely time our releases with with what's happening in the real world with movies and TV shows. So, for instance, when the last movies come out, we make sure our release comes out right with it. So that way we grab that enthusiasm, or everyone's thinking about Star Trek Beyond. Hey, we've got an expansion that comes out with it too at the same time. So people are actually because that was the 50th anniversary, and so that was a really big deal. We had a huge uptake on the 50th anniversary. We had a huge uptake because we had a big presence in Vegas, and we came out with the TOS expansion. We got Walter Koenig. We got James Doohan's son, Chris Doohan, to reprise the role of his father, Chris Doohan. And so we got a big uptake there. So we just kind of rode the wave of enthusiasm of everything with the 50th anniversary and the new movie. And then when Discovery came out, we had our anniversary event. Now we just released Discovery stuff, right? The ships and the uniforms. And there was a lag between PC and console for many technical and legal reasons. Maybe legal isn't the right word, but just how we work with Microsoft and PlayStation. But so that content those assets just hit console, and we got a huge upsurge in console. So that way we can actually see, even though it's kind of hard to measure when we released it at first because it was tied in with other things. We're trying to grab the wave. Well, console lags behind a couple of months, and then we can measure the surge there. And so you can see, wow, yeah, there's a huge uptake in participation in sales and gameplay and users coming into console because we released a bunch of Discovery assets in there. So and we can definitely measure the popularity of, say, something like a Discovery Crossfield class ship versus a random, whatever ship we might have made for the month, as far as interest is concerned. You can definitely see, far more people interested in getting a hold of the Discovery class ships than they were, whatever else that we might have made before that.
I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. People want to play what they can see on TV.
Yes, they want to see that. They want to be the hero. It's really interesting because when you release something in Star Trek Online, you really have to hit both an IP factor, what really resonates with players, along with really pretty, beautiful art and really amazing gameplay, right? Because every ship we release says something different about it. Has a special power, has different seating arrangements and slots, and so you've got to hit all three of those. And if you hit that trifecta, you got to hit at least two. But if you hit the trifecta, then people go nuts for it. I just really do. But the one that has the most weight is the IP recognizability, definitely. For instance, our Galaxy class ship is a good ship. It is not as powerful as some of our other ships, but it is probably still one of the most popular ships we have in the game because so many of our players are huge TNG fans. That's large population of our player base grew up on the Next Generation.
So speaking of recognizable IPs, you've worked on so many over the years. The Sims, you worked on City of Heroes and City of Villains, which was original IP.
You are doing your homework, huh?
Well, how can I not acknowledge that you worked on one of the best video game consoles ever designed, the Dreamcast?
I did work a little bit on the Dreamcast. I just moved and I just unpacked my Dreamcast, and I got every single Dreamcast game ever made because they gave us Dreamcast games. So I have like boxes of Dreamcast games. I don't even know what they do. They're still sealed up. And I got the fishing rod, and I got the little gun, and a couple different like Street Fighters. Yeah, I got the maracas and the Street Fighter kind of because Soul Calibur was the game that was at the time that was the best fighter. So I have the fighting joysticks, the like arcade joysticks. So I was just unpacking those just this past weekend. So yeah, I never worked on. I was a producer at the time, wasn't a designer. I didn't work on any Dreamcast games. I actually worked on. I was a producer for a game called Worms World Party, but I was mostly getting it to work on lines. I mostly worked on the network, the Dreamcast network, and Heat.net, and the online network that they had at the time. So that was my work there at Sega. So yeah, that was 20 years ago, 20-something years ago or something.
I love the Worms IP. I've played so many games in the series, and there are so many other games you've worked on that are well known. Like I mentioned, City of Heroes, City of Villains. I'm curious, what makes your experience of Star Trek Online unique? As I don't mean in terms of what the player or the consumer might notice, but just for you personally, what have you learned about working on MMOs at Cryptic Studio and specifically Star Trek Online?
What have I learned about working on MMOs? Well, I guess two things come to mind when you say that. The first is this would be the first game that I worked on that was a free-to-play MMO, right? Because right when Star Trek first launched, we were a standard subscription model like previous MMOs, and now free-to-play is the way the business model works now. And it's a really good business model if you do it right. It's a really terrible business model if you do it wrong. If you try to as a note to other developers out there, if you try to put gameplay and content behind paywalls, people will quit and not play your game. We never charge for any content in Star Trek Online. We believe in the concept of, if you're going to go see a movie, you can go see a movie at a matinee and it costs you $5. Well, they don't cost $5 anymore, but they used to cost $5.
It's been a while.
Right? Yeah. Or you could go to the evening show at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and you can pay a little bit more. Or you can go watch it in IMAX, or you can watch it in IMAX 3D. And every one of those gives you the same content, but you pay a little bit more money for an enhanced experience. And that's the model we use here. We never say we're not going to let you see the movie. So we've worked really hard at developing a model which is really fair, and so we let you play anything you want. We never even bug you about buying anything. So people don't even become spenders usually until they're hitting level 50 and level 60 in our game, when they feel like, what, I've gotten a really good experience. I don't mind dropping $10, $20, $30 on some stuff to enhance my experience. And so that has really changed the way we've done things, because if you buy a game for $50 in the store and you play it and it sucks, you feel like you still need to play it because you paid money for it. So you go ahead and you just play through it anyway. If you download and play a free-to-play game and it stinks in the first 5 minutes, you're just going to stop. So the onus is really on the developers to create a really amazing experience, the best experience you can as possible without turning people away. So you don't have their money yet. So you've got to keep delivering a good experience constantly, and you want people to stick around, so you got to keep delivering a good experience constantly. So it's harder work for a developer, and you have to really think the way you're developing, but I think in the end you actually get a better product. The consumers get a better product with that model. But there are terrible ways to do it. A lot of cell phone games do a terrible job at their model, where they hit paywalls, or you can't complete this level unless you spend $1 and get a lollipop to crash something, because you're just not going to let you. You're just impossible to win this level. We never do anything like that. You can play every piece of content in our game for free. But if you want that Prometheus-class ship that separates into 3 ships, then an Alpha, Beta, and Gamma section, then you can spend some money and you can buy that ship. But you know what? You can still play the game for free with the free ships we give you, or you can come to our events and earn a free Tier 6 ship if you play for a lot, and you earn the in-game currency. Then you can just get the ship. You can use the ship for participation instead of money, and we're fine with that because we get more people in the game, and that helps everybody. So that's been the number one thing that I've learned as a developer, like how to deliver different experience, how to build MMOs differently than we've had in the past. And so there's more business related in those design decisions. The other thing that's fundamentally different about Star Trek Online, other than the fact that it's Star Trek, and when I was offered the opportunity to become lead designer, I'm like, hell yeah, because it was Star Trek, and they knew I was a huge Star Trek fan at the time, so they felt I was a good fit for the role. I've learned a side of Hollywood that I would have never learned before. Dealing with SAG-AFTRA licensing and contracts, and dealing directly with writers and CBS, and getting a chance to meet and in many cases becoming good friends with a lot of the actors has been a real blessing and a real wonderful opportunity to be able to be on stage with Aaron Eisenberg or Garrett Wang on stage, and or doing an event with Denise Crosby in New York or something. That's amazing. I'll cherish those memories forever. Denise Crosby became such a good friend of mine. She actually officiated over my wife and I's renewal of our vows wedding ceremony on the bridge of the Enterprise in Star Trek Las Vegas. She just dropped that on us as a surprise. I was going to have her friend read the ceremony. She says, "No, I want to do it," and she married us on the bridge of the Enterprise.
Oh, that's so
It was so amazing. And podcasters at the time were there filming it, so they broadcast it live to all the fans, and it was surrounded by Star Trek people dressed in cosplay, Star Trek cosplay. There was a Doctor Who there too. I had a Klingon read. I found a Klingon, Andy the Klingon. I always give him a shout out, and he gave me we wrote up Klingon vows. We did a Klingon ceremony too, so he read that out. Total nerd thing, right? Complete nerd Star Trek geek thing. And Denise Crosby married me and my wife, right? And I would have never had that opportunity working on anything else. So it's such a part of my life now, and I've made great friends with that I would have never imagined, that I grew up watching on TV, that now I would have never imagined to. And many of them are just really, really wonderful people. So that's just been a really, really great blessing, and I can't measure that to anything. So that I can't compare that to anything else ever. So I'm very grateful for that.
That sounds like just a dream come true.
No, it really is. It's like, what am I doing? Like, I'm woken up in the morning and it's like, oh look, it's a text from J.G. Hertzler just texted me, or Walter Koenig is calling me on the phone. It's like, so that's really weird when Chekhov calls you on the phone, right? That's not normal. It's so exciting, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. I want to really honestly say I'm very, very grateful for that opportunity that I've gotten to experience that. So that's been very surreal.
Well, Al, this has been an amazing discussion, learning all about the integration of Star Trek Online and Star Trek Discovery and your own experiences at Cryptic Studios and with CBS. I'm sure we could chat for hours and hours more, but we want to be respectful of your time. Are there any parting shots you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Well, the only thing that I want to say is, a shameless plug about Victories of Life, which is coming out in, I think we announced June or July, summer. And we've announced, as far as we've announced Renee Auberjonois as Odo, and Nana Visitor as Kira, Armin Shimmerman as Quark, and J.G. Hertzler, of course, as Martok. And we've got a little teaser picture with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more silhouettes of actors that we are going to be announcing. So keep an eye on Star Trek Online as we announce those and watch for interviews for them. And we'll be recording those characters in the games for an amazing Deep Space Nine Gamma Quadrant experience, Victory's Life, this summer. You get to play as a Jem'Hadar. You don't have to play as a Jem'Hadar, but the story is there's a story that is told that is telling that story of the Jem'Hadar and the threat of the Hur'q invading the galaxy. So that's going to be it's something that I've wanted to do for years on Star Trek Online, is tell a Deep Space Nine story, because until Discovery, it was my favorite series of all times. But now Discovery, it still is my favorite of the classics, but Discovery is now my favorite series. So I cannot wait to tell Discovery stories, and they will be coming. So stay tuned.
Fantastic. And all that can, of course, be found at playstartrekonline.com. Al, remind our listeners where we can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter, Captain Gecko on Twitter. So that's where you'll see me little sneak peeks, and I'll probably take little pictures of voice actors doing their recordings here, and I'll do little audio clips and little behind the scene pictures of what we're doing over here at Cryptic. So Captain Gecko, that's Geko. No C in that, just because I didn't know how to spell gecko. So, Captain Geko. On Twitter.
Excellent. There'll be links to all that in the show notes at transporterlock.com. Sabriel, have you had as much fun as I have?
I have. This has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for doing this, Al.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you had fun. I'm sorry. I hope I wasn't too ranty. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
All Star Trek fans are passionate, and we're happy to share yours. So thank you.
I am very passionate about Star Trek. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about my crazy stories.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter at TransporterLock, or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.